Welcome to the Prevail Over Cancer Podcast, where we take a metabolic approach to help guide you on preventing, prevailing, and striving over cancer.
We are live on the Prevail Over Cancer podcast. I am your co-host, Jeff Lopes, with Keith Bishop. Exciting topic today because it's something that's in the news quite a bit lately, and you're hearing a lot of people talking about it. And it's microplastics in our blood, and how are we getting them there? And is it through plastic cups? Is it through how we heat foods? Is it through? There's so many different areas of containers when we're rewarming food. Keith brought this to our attention and said, this is a very great topic. And I thought it's an amazing topic that we could add so much value about talking about it, breaking it down, and making people have a better understanding so they can make better choices. And that's all we want to do, is give up people the opportunity to make better choices. When did you actually start paying attention to plastics and the connection between plastics and cancer and how we heat up food? And it can even go back to even water bottles and sitting in a truck for 3-4 weeks at a time. So let's break that down. And when did you actually start putting some more attention to it? How many years ago? Like, when did it bring more of an eye opener to you?
Well, yeah, actually many years ago. Gosh, it was probably over 10 years ago. I had a water bottle in my truck, actually in my toolbox in the back of the bed of my truck, and I opened that bottle up one day, and it was an emergency bottle, really is what I considered it. So emergency bottle, opened it up and took a swig, and they go, "Oh, that was horrible. It tasted horrible," and that's weird because it's really just a year old or something, but it'd been outside through the summer. And I thought, well, that's bad. And that's what really started making me thinking about it. That was over 10 years ago, maybe 15 years ago. And then I had to get both my hips replaced. And then, there's not that many choices, but on this metal post that's down in my bone and up in my hip, there's this plastic coating on it. Yeah. Oh, okay. And then the one exercise or one activity I'm not supposed to do is extended running, like marathons and things like that, because this is plastic rubbing on plastic and they'll wear out. I thought, oh, that's in my body. Where's that plastic go? It's just kind of floating around in there. And so even the previous ones, hip or joint replacements of metal or ceramics, the same issue. There's stuff rubbing on each other. So I started paying attention to that. I said, okay, well, what are some other things? Because I have to have that hip, and I've got them. And matter of fact, it allows me to do so much more. Again, I'm extremely active. We're talking about some of my trips and stuff, wild things I do, and horseback riding up in the mountains. But what are some other sources? And start paying attention. There's plastic everywhere, and so not just including what we wear and clothes, the plastic phone case, but also containers, and we knew for years that, matter of fact, gosh, it's been 20 years probably, that you're not supposed to wash that baby bottle in the dishwasher and dry it in the automatic dishwasher because it would leach out the plastics, and there could be some health concerns. And that was 20 years ago. And then they started coming out with BPA free plastic bottles, for babies, and then therefore adults also. So the companies are still promoting that's BPA free, but still, they say that you should not be putting them through that extreme heat process. Okay, well, what are those heat processes? Heating up foods, boiling foods, to-go foods. Many different things have these plastics, and they do dissolve. There's some newer, and I've actually posted many social media things about this recently. There's some new equipment that they can actually run, water through a special microscope type apparatus now, and literally after brewing a tea bag, a tea bag is not paper necessarily, and it's actually plastic. There's billions of particles of plastics in your tea after you brew it. And great, and so that's another change. So I quit using the tea bags and went with loose leaf, using an infuser. A lot of people already know these things, and we have been doing it, but but now we're learning and getting more and more science behind it to show the concern. So it's been somewhat of an evolution for me. I've tried to limit it now, but now that it's more evident, and certain types of estrogenic cancers are more impacted, and that's my family history, and my wife's family history is estrogenic type cancers. And these plastics have estrogenic properties. They attach to estrogen receptors, and it can stimulate cells. So now we're trying to do make changes and learn and keep making changes as much as possible.
Let me dive into something, and it's something as we were talking about when we talk about containers. I thought of it. There's two ways we could look at containers. One is everybody in their household. I'm sure if they open a cupboard, they have plastic storage containers for food. Mm-hmm. And growing up, your mom would put leftovers in that. You slap it in the microwave and warm it up. And whether it's BPA free or not, you're still getting microplastics somehow attaching to that food that we're going to be digesting. Also, there's that huge trend, and this was maybe in the last 15, 20 years, but it's still very active, where people were with these diet foods and they would have these pre-made microwave meals. All these massive companies were coming out with these pre-microwave meals that you slap in a microwave, and they were supposed to be a healthy diet where you would eat less calories or whatever you talked about. And that kind of evolved and switched over to pre-made healthy meals. And there's companies right across North America, and all they do is you pre-order your 7 or 8 meals for the week, and they send them to your house, and they're done. And most of them are great options of eating.
Yes.
But they come in these containers, and most people are bringing them to their work, slapping their microwave. Simple way of eliminating that. And I think it's just people's laziness of not doing it is taking that food out and putting it on a plate and then warming it up. Exactly. Something simple like that would resolve so many issues. But now when you look at that food and it's warm and they put it in a container, just sitting in that container for 2-3 days, or if it's in the freezer, what are the chances of still that plastic, or if it's not heated, is it still going to be transferring onto the food, or is it has to be warmed or melted to be kind of transferred onto that food?
There will be probably some transference, because the plastics are, they're man-made, but they're cut and they're melted to make the plastic. So there's definitely some plastics that are going to be available, but the heat is the worst concern. So that heating process literally kind of melts the plastic to a certain extent. And then the food, especially if it has a higher fat content, the fats are very hot. And,
the oils. Yeah.
And the plastics are more of a fat soluble, oil soluble type chemical. And so the fats will definitely dissolve those more so than just a water type of an issue. But so, one question is, we can't avoid plastics. Correct. We can make better choices. For example, a plastic frozen vegetable or fruit bag, I'm not as concerned about that as I am about the metal can with the plastic liner in it. And so whenever they make that food, that canned food, they cook the beans. Those beans are hot and like boiling hot. They put them in the can that has a plastic liner in it. The purpose of that liner is so that it won't eat away at the metal. So the food, oils and especially waters and things will eat away at metal, rust it. So they put that plastic liner in there. When you cut a can open and you look at the top can, the top part is actually a separate part from the rest of the can. It's got a different kind of a coating on it. You can literally see that almost a whitish color on it.
Yeah.
So they put this hot food into that can, and then they seal that can, and it's kind of a soldering type, a laser welding type process. Seal that on there, so there's plastic in that, and so that's a hot. So fruits and vegetables are put in those cans hot. So that has a tendency to dissolve those plastics, and then they're sitting there for a while. Um, so that's a concern. Heat would be a greater concern for me than a cold beverage. So,
just to go back on that, so we could
Yeah.
bring, as we're talking about each subject, we could kind of give better options. So
yes,
canned goods, if you are going, and I do buy organic beans in cans because they're convenient. I still wash the crap out of them. But what are other options for people that do buy canned fruit or canned beans, something like that, for convenience and obviously for saving money too? Maybe people are obviously on budgets. What are other options, or what other stuff would they do when they get them? Is there a way of washing? Should they going through the whole washing process to help it, or is that more the pesticide aspect? Is there anything that they could do to help remove that or eliminate that?
I think. Well, first of all, I haven't seen studies, so this is my personal view, and just thinking about the physics and preparation. But rinsing, definitely. So opening up a can of peaches and just eating it directly out of the can. Gosh, how many times have I done that in the past? In the years that
I did that so many times growing up.
Exactly. Well, that's not the healthiest thing to do, and so it would be better to take that out, rinse it, or the beans, rinse those completely. That will help reduce some of that and wash that out. Once again, I haven't seen the science, but that has to help reduce that concern. And so little choices. Now, also, you can actually get dried beans, organic dried beans, and fix them ahead of time, in a pressure cooker. Matter of fact, we love a pressure cooker. A more popular, newer brand's called Instapot, but it's a pressure cooker, and you can cook up a batch of beans, in a very short time, and have leftovers, and you can take those to work. And so, I see several posts about prepping ahead of time and fixing literally like 4 or 5 days worth of food ahead of time, and including the beans and all that kind of stuff. And so we can prepare these things ahead of time. And it's a whole nother step that we have to do. And time, you and I are busy. Everybody's busy. We have work, family, activities, and events and things like that we're doing. So it is a challenge, but we have to, try to fit that into a schedule, maybe a work schedule for those of us that work full time, to be able to do those things. I will eat canned foods, but I try not to do that as much as I used to.
Okay.
And, but rinsing, washing, definitely an option. Never, and evidently people do this, but never heat the can up, on the stovetop and eat it like that. I mean, that once again, there's a plastic lining in that can.
Yeah. So when we're looking at, once I got diagnosed with cancer, and I really started digging into every option I had to keep myself as healthy as possible. The first thing we did at home was pretty much any plastic container we had, we pretty much tossed them all out, and I replaced them all with glass containers.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another big option for people, and they're very cost efficient. You could even, our local dollar stores sell them now. So you could buy glass containers pretty much anywhere now. So that's a great option as well, to replace your plastic ones with glass. Let's talk about water bottles. And it's something we've talked about before, but it's just the bare fact that most of these, you buy a case of 24 or a case of 12 water bottles, they're cost efficient. We have them here, 24 water bottles. When they're on sale, you can buy them for $1.99 Canadian, which is crazy. So you can't go wrong in the price wise. And obviously you want to promote people for drinking as much water as possible. But these bottles are sitting in trucks and containers, and they're sitting there for sometimes 2, 3, 4 weeks traveling in the heat.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So by the time they get to you, they have already had, and just in general, washing the bottles, the pressure and all that stuff like that. So there's a lot of different factors in it. Where's your mindset with water bottles? And do you actually, obviously, I bring my own containers, I fill my own containers, I got my own Yeti and all that. But people that are on the go, what other options are there?
Yeah, so matter of fact, it's another one of the things that's like, I can't say I never drink out of a plastic water bottle. When 2 weeks ago, I was on vacation, I did, I went to a convenience store and got a water bottle and drank that. But normally now I do have stainless steel, but I needed the water. And the water I had for the horses wasn't going to work. Okay. So that's not a clean container. But glass, trying to use glass, drinking filtered water using glass is, the number one thing, if at all possible. They don't make, matter of fact, gosh, have you ever seen any glass water bottles anymore?
No.
Used to.
No.
I do remember them at one time, but I sure haven't seen them recently at all. But so I'm not a fan. I think we got to be very careful of that. If I had to drink some, I would, but then it's the day in and day out that I'm going to be doing my glass or stainless
steel,
or even a ceramic. Sometimes I may just have a ceramic container, and get some water in the break room and bring it up. So I'm going to try to make those choices as much as possible. Now, along that line, so traveling, to-go cups and to-go foods.
Yeah.
That is one of my biggest concerns. Like you mentioned, the food prep options, and I think are great. You take them out of those containers before you heat them up. But to-go foods, that are wrapped in plastic or paper, even paper that has a non-stick coating on it. That's a plastic coating on that paper that hamburger comes in, and those French fries that are in that box. It's got a slick coating, and you got the heat, you got the fat. Those things are dissolving and eating away at the plastics that we're putting in our mouth. So I try to be very careful about to-go cups. So while I was traveling, driving about 12 hours, pulling the horse trailer, I stopped and get coffee, put it in my stainless steel mug. I didn't use that cup. Worst case scenario is literally, getting a to-go cup of coffee, in a styrofoam or a paper lined cup, and immediately putting it into your stainless as soon as possible. The longer it sits in that plastic, the more plastic it's going to dissolve, and that will ingest into our body. So, matter of fact, recently I'm just seeing the headlines, but I mean, they're finding, plastic in human hearts.
Yeah, I mean, the microplastics in our blood, if you actually take any single human on this world and actually do a study test on them with the proper blood work, I mean, we're all infested with this. We all have it in us. And it's crazy that it's every generation is going to get worse and worse and worse if we don't kind of put a stop on it. And we're obviously a cancer podcast, but this goes towards so many other health issues later on. Right. So many other health issues, right? So this is what we all have to look at and understand, that what is going to help us prevent this, and is taking those day-to-day small baby steps, those measures of using a plastic container, using a stainless cup or a ceramic mug or something like that for your coffee or your tea. Doing these small little changes, you're not going to avoid plastic. Plastic is everywhere. Right. Everything we seem to be touching and has some form of plastic, whether it's the microphone, like everything seems to have plastic. Mm-hmm. But if we could eliminate at least as much as we can to ingest, that's a huge step. And I'm so careful of what I ingest because of the connection of colorectal cancer and anything you put in your body. So really need us as a society to really start focusing on making those better choices, getting rid of plastic containers, adding glass containers, using, like I said, stainless steel for our coffee or on the go, having that option. If we do have to go to a drive-through, which in Canada, coffee is insane. Every corner there's a coffee shop. And people are just walking around all day long with these coffee cups. And I was one of them.
Right.
I did that for years. I would buy 2, 3, sometimes coffees a day and walk around with them. Now that I've eliminated, now I make my own coffee. I can't remember the last time I actually bought it, actually a local coffee place. But if I do buy it the odd time, exactly what you said, I pour it right away into my mug. So making those choices, I think, is so, so valid.
That's right. Yeah. So there's, several cancers that have kind of like an estrogenic type of impact.
Which cancers for us to be more aware of?
So it's more like gut cancers. So esophageal, gastric, colorectal, rectal, colon, prostate, ovarian, breast. Those are the main ones that I'm thinking of. They have estrogen receptors. And so if an estrogenic, whether it be the hormones in our body or a synthetic version, attaches that estrogen receptor,
Yes.
now that's going to potentially stimulate that cell to do something inappropriately. So it depends on the strength. So I mentioned earlier about BPA being a known concern, bisphenol A, abbreviated BPA. But the problem is, basically they're not supposed to be using that chemical anymore, but companies still do. Other countries don't necessarily follow those guidelines. It's a money thing. And then the substitutes that they're using, we don't know what they are.
No, I would say probably not much any better or anything like that. No.
Probably not better.
Yeah.
We don't know what they are. They don't have to tell us. And as a matter of fact, I've spent hours digging and trying to find out things. And I mean, businesses no longer show you how they make canned products, that manufacturing line. And so it's very difficult to find information about how things are made, what chemicals are used. So it's not well published. There is research in it. So therefore, we just need to be making our choices and trying to limit that. I think one statistic, something around, I don't know if this is I better not say it. I was going to say how much plastic we consume a day. I hate to say that.
I do remember reading a couple articles on that. And it's something where a lot of even of the top health podcasts that I listen to, it's a topic they talk about on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So, and these are not cancer podcasts, they're more just health, general podcasts.
General health.
And it's incredible where, I mean, there's doctors and scientists doing study after study on this. And it's just, if you look at the evolution of the human and how over the last maybe 20 to 30 years, especially even 40 years, how plastics are just, these microplastics are just increasing in our blood. And it's like year by year, more and more and more, to the point where like newborns are already having their blood passed down.
Mm-hmm.
So it's scary. It's scary and how much it's going to evolve. And exactly what you said, and there's one thing you talked about, Keith, in the last podcast is, and we're talking about another topic, but these billion-dollar food industry companies, they have the top scientists that are literally creating new versions of something that it might take 5-10 years before we find out is bad for us.
Oh, at least 5 or 10 years. That's
so
correct. Yeah.
The only way, if something says, oh, it's this free or this free, the only way you could guarantee it is making the proper choices, whether it's glass,
Mm-hmm.
whether you're heating it. Like, everybody understands the proper choices. You just got to do them. You just got to do them. And you don't have to do everything at once. You start off like something small. Maybe you start off by eliminating that cup of coffee and getting a mug, or having your morning one in a ceramic mug at work. So bringing a ceramic mug to work, bringing an actual ceramic plate to work to heat your food in. Like just little stuff that if you put in place, it makes life so much easier. If you don't have it there, you don't have the convenience. So make it convenient for yourself. As long as you can make it convenient yourself, life gets a little easier. Now you're making healthier choices, and these choices might not affect you today or tomorrow, but it might affect you 5-10 years from now. And you might well never know the effect, and which is, if you don't know the effect, that's probably a good thing, because it'll probably eliminate something from happening.
Right. Exactly. And so we have to do the best we can, make those steps and changes. And, kind of another area that I think of, besides a coffee cup, is going to be, paper plates. So people have a tendency to use, paper plates, but they're plastic coated.
Yeah.
It's what it is. And if you would heat food up, or even if you take a plastic fork and a knife and you cut that food on that paper plastic plate, you're literally just cutting right into that plastic. You can see that happening. You're putting that food in. So that's just kind of another area. So you mentioned like here, at the pharmacy, we have dishes that we brought kind of like, you know, just, leftovers from broken sets we have at home. We brought them up here, and, we got mugs, and we got ceramic and glass, and all kinds of dishes. And, instead of putting plastic wrap over your microwave food, put your plate in, put your food on it, put another plate on top of it,
Yeah. Yeah.
to prevent that splash or, explosions of foods and things like that, keep it clean. And so just use two of those plates, to decrease that plastic wrap. Is another source. Matter of fact, definitely there are people that take a plastic wrap around a potato and microwave a potato. They measure those plastics in the potato. It migrates into the potato.
Yeah.
So, so we got to be and it's not always just that, but I mean, that's some things we can't make a change on. Like if we go out to eat, we may not know exactly what they did, but when we're at home, we can definitely be making changes.
Well, where's your mindset? I'm going to ask you one more question before we wrap this up. Where's your mindset with parchment paper when you put it on something to put in the oven? Because now that I think about it, we use it in my mind is like anything you put in the oven, you want to put that, or we use parchment paper in our air fryer because there's a coating. So I put the parchment paper to avoid the coating. But whenever you look at parchment paper, there's a coating on that already.
Yes, that's correct. And I did some research, and companies aren't really forthcoming on what exactly is in it. So supposedly it's a silicone-based slick coating.
Okay.
And silicone is based off of silicon. Silicon is actually a mineral.
Yeah. So it's a healthier choice.
Healthier choice. So so parchment paper, definitely better than wax paper.
Okay.
Wax paper is a petroleum product.
Yes.
Estrogenic and not okay. Parchment paper, I'm just not crazy about it. We will use it. I can't find any concerns about it. But
I'm there. I'm going to a rabbit hole right now. But like I said, we take the air fryer. We do use air fryer from time to time as a healthier choice. But because it does have the non-stick, we put parchment paper so the food doesn't touch it. There's other options where you could buy a silicone based. So silicone would be a better option to have a silicone covering or something like that. Is that what you're saying? Or is that still
okay? I don't know. The problem is that so these companies, they make these silicone non-stick cooking containers. The countries.
You don't know what else is put in there, what the blend is or the
exactly. Yeah, it is a plastic type product.
Yeah.
And so far I haven't seen any reviews or any studies on that.
Yeah.
And so in my mind, I'm just not crazy about it. I'm being pretty critical, actually. So, I don't know of any scientific proof, but I don't like the idea of it. And so we don't use the silicone non-stick containers. If a friend of ours were to say, "Oh, here's we use that," I wouldn't turn away the food, but I'm just not going to do that on a regular basis.
Okay.
So same thing with the parchment paper. I do make a homemade. My wife blesses me with a homemade protein bar.
Yeah, we talked about that.
It's on parchment paper.
Yeah, yeah, we do the same as well.
Baking, to bake that, and so. But it's not like that's every single day, every single meal or anything like that. So it's going to take some time now that we have more scientific equipment, and as people or groups, interest groups even, are starting to test these things, we're going to learn about it. No. But so I would be careful about how hot that parchment paper gets, and even the silicone products. The hotter the greater the concern, the more breakdown that there's going to be. They tell you there's a temperature limit on those. And so you do need to be aware of those temperature limits.
Okay. This is a pretty impactful little podcast. We got a lot of information out here today, so I appreciate it once again. Do you have anything else you want to add before we wrap this episode up on plastics?
Oh, just try to make little changes.
Yeah.
Just get rid of that plastic, and you can get these at inexpensive stores, Goodwill. I mean, you get this stuff, glass anywhere, and it's not expensive. And yes, it's a little more fragile. And matter of fact, you can take these containers, actually not this shape, but these containers in your vehicle.
Yeah.
So you don't have to have a plastic or a paper cup in your vehicle. Yes, it may break, but if you drop it, but
even storage too, when you're looking at storing it into your fridge or your freezer, is still a better option. It's always a better option having glass. Mm-hmm. This has been awesome, buddy.
Okay, great.
Excited for to release this episode and looking forward to our next one. Thanks, like always, Keith. You're the best. You're bundle of knowledge, and you're helping so many people. So I appreciate you, buddy.
Thanks for sharing this. Great. Appreciate it. Thanks.
Thanks, buddy.